Britain is sending additional fighter jets to Qatar as tensions escalate across the Middle East. Prime Minister Keir Starmer says 4 Typhoon jets will join an existing UK squadron in the Gulf state to strengthen defence operations across the region. The announcement comes after a drone strike earlier this week on a Royal Air Force base in Cyprus. Starmer has justified the move, claiming that Iran's actions are targeting global energy infrastructure.
Iran is targeting oil and gas facilities in the Gulf and tankers in the Straits of Hormuz, trying to inflict economic pain around the world. So we will continue to work with the industries affected and our allies to respond to any impact.
2 Wildcat helicopters equipped with anti-drone capabilities are expected to arrive in Cyprus on Friday, while the British warship, the HMS Dragon, is due to deploy next week. Despite the military build-up, the leader of the Labour Party insists the UK is pushing for calm, although he could not give a timescale as to how long the conflict in the Middle East will last.
We are doing everything we can to de-escalate this. I can't give you a time base for this. I don't think anybody can. My strong view is that we need to de-escalate, and ultimately this will have to be a matter of negotiation when it comes to some of the core issues like nuclear capability.
Starmer initially refused to have any role in the US-Israeli war with Iran, but later agreed to a US request to use 2 British military bases for a, quote, specific and limited defence purpose.
Following Greece's move to send 2 frigates and 4 F-16 fighter jets, and France's immediate redeploying of the nuclear-powered Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier from the Baltic to Cyprus, other European countries are also taking action. Spain announced that by next week its Cristobal Colon frigate will arrive in the region. The vessel had been operating in the same area as the French carrier, conducting escort and training missions. According to the Spanish Defense Ministry, the frigate is expected to reach waters off the Greek island of Crete on Tuesday. Italy, after obtaining final approval from Parliament, announced that they will also send reinforcements to Cyprus. Rome noted that it will join the ranks of France, Spain, and the Netherlands and dispatch naval assets in the coming days to defend the Mediterranean island, an EU member state. Defense Minister Guido Crosetto stressed that a direct attack against Cyprus or NATO countries would force allies to intervene, invoking Article 5 of the NATO Charter and Article 7 of the EU. The Dutch frigate HNLMS Evertsen is also headed to Cyprus and is currently sailing alongside the French carrier. On the British side, London has deployed its HMS Dragon warship. UK Defence Secretary John Healey arrived on the island on Wednesday and met with his Cypriot counterpart, Vasilis Palmas, where they held talks on bolstering defences against possible future attacks. On Thursday, an alarm once again sounded at the British base in Akrotiri, which was attacked earlier in the week. According to government spokesperson Konstantinos Letimbiotis, the alert was triggered by UK forces as a precautionary measure after receiving intel of an incoming projectile.
Στο πλαίσιο των προληπτικών μέτρων που λαμβάνονται, ήταν η απόφαση της διοίκησης των Βρετανικών βάσεων να ενεργοποιήσει τα σχετικά πρωτόκολλα. Εμείς είχαμε παρακολουθήσει πολύ στενά και παρακολουθούμε στενά κάθε εξέλιξη. Όπως έχω πει και προηγουμένως, διαφάνηκε ότι δεν υπήρχε οποιαδήποτε ένδειξη ότι έχει κατεύθυνση προς την Κύπρο. Εκ τούτου έχουν ενημερωθεί ήδη και οι κάτοικοι των Βρετανικών βάσεων ότι ο συναγερμός έχει λήξει.
Cypriot authorities are also working to improve emergency SMS warning systems after reports that not all residents were receiving important alerts.
Azerbaijan has been deeply shaken by the Iranian strike on Nakhchivan International Airport and a nearby school. The state is now formulating its response. President Ilham Aliyev has announced that the country's army was brought to full combat readiness after what he described as an act of terror by Tehran. During a meeting of the Security Council, he said the people of Azerbaijan should be assured that any hostile force will face our, quote, iron fist.
Here in Azerbaijan's capital, Baku, security has visibly tightened after authorities say drones were launched from Iranian territory targeting civilian infrastructure in the country's Nakhchivan exclave. According to Azerbaijan's Ministry of Defense, the unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, struck areas around Nakhchivan International Airport and other civilian sites earlier today. The head of the Emergency Medical Service Department at the Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic Hospital has confirmed that 4 people were injured in the attack. And officials are saying that the technical details of the drones and the full scale of the incident are still under investigation. Now, while the reported strikes took place in the city of Nakhchivan, which is hundreds of kilometres away from here in Baku, there's already a noticeable increase in police presence across parts of the city. I was driving through earlier before, and officers can be seen stationed near busy public areas, including shopping centres, and that suggests that precautionary security measures are now in place. Azerbaijan's defence ministry says that the Islamic Republic of Iran bears full responsibility for the incident and is warning that the attacks will not go unanswered. Nadira Tudor, Euronews in Baku.
Qatar's Interior Ministry announced Thursday that authorities are evacuating residents in the area around the U.S. Embassy here in Doha, calling it a temporary precaution. This comes after U.S. embassies and consulates were targeted in the UAE, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia earlier this week. Meanwhile, the Qatar news agency says Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdurrahman bin Jassim Al Thani received a phone call from Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, the first direct contact between the two sides since the war began 6 days ago. During that call, Qatar's Prime Minister reportedly rejected Iran's claim that recent missile attacks were not aimed at Qatar, but were instead targeting American interests. Sheikh Mohammed pointed specifically to strikes near Doha's airport and Qatar's LNG production facilities and called for the attacks to stop immediately. At the same time, Qatar and the UAE say they'll cover hotel stays and meals for passengers stranded because of airspace closures. Here in Doha, the airspace remains closed, leaving around 8,000 transit passengers stuck waiting for flights out. I spoke with an American traveler who was on his way home to Texas, connecting through Doha after attending a friend's wedding in India.
I would say that this is definitely a scary situation, but luckily everyone, like the Qatari citizens, they've been so wonderful and helpful. I've kind of expressed some concern as to should I leave the country? Should I go to Saudi Arabia and fly out of there? But a lot of Qatari citizens have told me, they were like, stay put, it's fine, because Doha and Qatar are pretty safe, which I do believe as well. But it is just nice and reassuring having a local say that.
The U.S. State Department says about 17,500 Americans have returned to U.S. soil from the Middle East since the start of this war. Adil Halim, Euronews, Doha.
U.S. President Donald Trump has fired Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem after weeks of criticism over immigration enforcement and disaster response. Noem faced tough questioning from lawmakers earlier this week and has faced a wave of scrutiny since the shooting deaths of 2 protesters in Minneapolis at the hands of immigration officers. Trump says Noem will instead serve as a special envoy for a new Western Hemisphere security initiative called the Shield of Americas. She is the first cabinet secretary to leave during Trump's second term. The U.S. president says he'll nominate Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen to lead the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, though he must still be confirmed by the Senate.
What the president said. The president made it very clear if you're...
Is this Ukraine extending a hand to Hungary? On Thursday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky mentioned a possible timetable for restarting the Druzhba oil pipeline. The pipeline supplies Russian oil to Hungary and Slovakia. However, Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban accuses Kiev of deliberately blocking the flow of oil.
Так ось звучить сьогодні наступна інформація, що впродовж місяця-півтора він може запрацювати цей нафтопровід. Але це не значить, що буде відновлено те, що було зруйновано. І можна паралельно робити деякі речі.
This issue weakens the European Union. Hungary is using its veto power in the 27-member bloc to hold up the passage of the EU's 20th sanctions package and to prevent Brussels from delivering a 90 billion euros lifeline loan to Ukraine. In a letter sent this week, Hungarian Prime Minister asked European Commission President to increase political pressure on Ukraine to restart crude deliveries. Kiev claims that a section of the pipeline in western Ukraine was hit by a Russian drone late January. Rising sea levels caused by climate change could threaten millions more people. According to a new study published in the journal Nature, researchers studied hundreds of scientific studies and hazard assessments, calculating that about 90% of them underestimated baseline coastal water heights by an average of 30 centimeters.
If we take this hypothetical 1 meter relative sea level rise, we figure out that this underestimates global coastal population by up to 12%.
Adjusting to a more accurate coastal height baseline means that if seas rise by a little more than 1 meter, waters could inundate up to 37% more land and threaten 77 million to 132 million more people, the study said. The problem is said to be much more prevalent in Southeast Asia and the Indo-Pacific region, and less so in Europe and along Atlantic coasts.